Hi guys, it's Alan here. Today we're going to do cells, the introductory part to cells, and then in the next video we'll look at the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Then we look at the differences and compare and contrast. So, what is a cell? You 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 will be asked to define a cell or describe the cell and maybe the cell theory, what makes up a cell theory. So in this video, we'll just look at the cell, the definition, and then talk about the cell theory and sometimes limitations that I experienced in the cell theory as we look at them. So a cell is the smallest living unit of an organism. So these they cannot be seen with human eyes. So they are microscopic. So it being the smallest, meaning you have to observe them under a microscope. So cells were discovered in about 1665 by Robert Hooke. So he observed a lot of box-like structures that he coined cells. So Robert Hooke, if you asked who discovered cells or in which year cells were discovered, so the person who discovered cells is Robert Hooke, and they were discovered in 1665. Further studies were conducted by other scientists named Marius. So the name pronunciation is a bit something else. Theodore and Rudolf, who had proposed the cell theory. So these guys are the ones who proposed the cell theory. So plants made up of cells. So let's look at the cell theory. So Marius said plants are made of cells, and then Theodore, no, forgive me the name, said all names are made of cells. So if all animals are made of cells, then what about viruses and the four plants are made? What about viruses? So there's certain things that question the cell theory. So meaning the cell theory has limitations. And then Rudolph said all cells come from pre-existing cells. Okay, there's a question. If all cells come from the pre-existing cells, so where did the first cell come from? So there are certain limitations that contrast with the cell theory. So let's look at let's go a bit detailed into them. So this is just like a repetition of what we've already said. So the cell theory, however, has limitations. Like I said, three statements that make up the cell theory may not be applicable at all. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. May not be applicable at all times. So let's look at the first one. All living cells are made of cells. This statement applies to most organisms except viruses. Yes. Viruses are not made up of cells. A single virus particle is called a virion, and it is made up of genetic material which could be either RNA or DNA. So we all know that RNA is ribonucleic acid and DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid contained in a protective protein shell called a capsid. So don't get confused about DNA and then RNA. So DNA is double stranded and RNA is single strand. Actually, when we look at the DNA in the future video, we're going to understand about the two. So, but let's talk about what we have now. So, the cell is the basic unit of life. This statement too does not apply to viruses. Yes. The other part is all cells come from pre-existing cells. Yes, this statement is true for life as we know it now, but the question remains, where did the first cell come from? So this is what makes up the cell theory. So, like I said, it's an introductory video that will look at just the definition of the cell and talk about the cell theory. So, this is cell theory. All cells come from pre-existing cells. Then, the cell is a basic unit of life, and all plants are made up of cells. Yes. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you for your time.